talk so you can...
That's fine.
Oh, okay.
We'll make sure it's picking
Testing, testing.
up. Yeah.
Are you sure it's not 8? No?
Yeah, that's where I am.
Oh, 8
Eight
is right.
is
Oh, I
the
thought I
one.
heard you say 7.
No,
Yeah, we
7's the
did
one that
seven.
we
I
did.
said the last one was 7.
Well, good morning to the live stream community. Here we are back again. It's Wednesday morning at the High Mountain Presbyterian Church. I'm Pastor Lou, and we're ready to do our reading together. We are in Jeremiah. We are in Jeremiah, and we are reading the lengthy chapter of chapter 8.
Sorry, Barb.
And then we'll read it, and then we'll discuss it. Okay? Somebody's planning to read, right?
Yes. At that time, says the Lord, the bones of the kings of Judah, the bones of its officials, the bones of the priests, the bones of the prophets, and the bones of the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be brought out of their tombs, and they shall be spread before the sun and the moon and the host of heaven, which they have loved and served, which they have followed, and which they have incurred of and worshipped, and they shall not be gathered or buried. They shall be like dung on the surface of the ground. Death shall be preferred to life by all the remnant that remains of this evil family in all the places where I have driven them, says the Lord of hosts. The blind perversity of the whole nation. You shall say to them, thus says the Lord, when people fall, do not get up again. Do they not get up again? If they go astray, do they not turn back? Why then has this people turned away in perpetual faithlessness? They were held fast to deceit. They have refused to return. I have given heed and listened, but they do not speak honestly. No one repents of wickedness, saying, what have I done? All of them turn to their own course, like a horse plunging headlong into battle. Even the stork in the heavens knows its times, and the turtle dove, swallow, and crane observe the time of their coming. But my people do not know the ordinance of the Lord. How can you say, we are wise, and the law of the Lord is with us, when in fact the false pen of the scribes has made it into a lie? The wise shall be put to shame, they shall be dismayed and taken, since they have rejected the word of the Lord. What wisdom is to them? Therefore, I will give their wives to others, and their fields to conquerors, because from the least to the greatest, everyone is greedy for unjust gain. Prophet to priest, everyone deals falsely. They have treated the wound of the daughter of my people carelessly, saying, peace, peace, when there is no peace. They acted shamefully. They committed abomination, yet they were not at all ashamed. They did not know how to blush. Therefore, they shall fall among those who fail. At the time when I punish them, they shall be overthrown, says the Lord. I will surely gather them, says the Lord. There are no grapes on the vine, nor figs on the fig tree. Even the leaves are withered. And what I gave them has passed away from them. Why do you sit still? Gather together. Let us go into the fortified cities and perish there. For the Lord our God has doomed us to perish, and has given us poisoned water to drink, because we have sinned against the Lord. We look for peace, but find no good. For a time of healing, but there is terror instead. The snorting of their horses is heard from Dan. At the sound of the neighing of their stallions, the whole land quakes. They come and devour the land and all that fills it, the city and those who live in it. See, I am letting snakes loose among you, adders that cannot be charmed, and they shall bite you? Bite you. Sorry about that,
Sorry.
says the Lord. I need to use a bigger font here. The prophet mourns for the people. My joy is gone. Grief is upon me. My heart is sick. Listen, the cry of the daughter of my people from far and wide in the land. Is the Lord not in Zion? Is the King not in her? Why have they provoked me to anger with their images, with their foreign idols? The harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we are not saved. For the brokenness of the daughter of my people, I am broken. I mourn, and horror has seized me. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then has the health of the daughter of my people not been restored?
A weird question at the end of that. The whole litany was how they've gone astray. You're asking why we haven't been restored. That
Yeah.
seems kind of odd. Oh, okay.
Well, there appears to be no one to treat the illness. There's no one, there's no resistance to their ravenous behavior. And again, I'm looking for it always, the imagery of what is it that God is upset about. So if you look at verse 13, there are no grapes on the vine, no figs on the tree. And we're supposed to know what that means. That's the mission. That is the mission of God. Like, what is the purpose of a fig tree? To grow figs. What is the purpose of the nation, of the people of God, is to do the good works that they're supposed to do, the caring for the poor, and there's no grapes on the vine. They're not doing a bit of it. And, I don't know. Then I also find again this justice theme in verse 10. Because from the least to the greatest, everyone is greedy for unjust gain. This is the epitome of the opposite of God's hope and God's initiative in the world. Now the very people of God who have reaped benefits from the life with God have used those benefits now to enrich themselves with no concern for justice or fairness.
So they violated the compact between God says, I will give you the land, and what grows in the land is yours. If you do right.
If you work, if you live in hospitality, because I am being hospitable.
Right.
I am generous and I am merciful, and so I give to you, and I expect that will generate an attitude of generosity and mercy as well. Why would it not?
Because we are human beings.
And we
to read, and if we don't see God, then, maybe we can do stuff and nobody will ever know. But
I also, in reading this, wanted to point out that in the beginning, I don't know, the older I get, I'm in a real argument with my fundamentalist past, and I'm having this.
I've been hearing that ever since I've known you.
I'm having this
It's not
argument.
new.
I'm having this argument in my head, but I look at what it starts out with. The interesting imagery that starts out with is that God is going to unearth the bones of the officials and the priests and the bones of the prophets and the inhabitants. This is a rejection entirely of the idea that God has a hell. That God has a place to go to punish. What is the worst punishment that could happen to these people?
You're not in
You're
the
not
ground.
resting in the ground.
You're out for the wild animals.
You're out now. You want to worship the sun. You want to be that person that sacrifices your children and others to the sun and the moon and the stars. Okay, so why don't you just lay on the ground,
Right.
and let them take you?
It's a measure of how awful they are.
Yeah.
That even the ground will not.
Right.
It just, I didn't know where he was going with that, though. In the beginning, I thought, oh, the bones will come forth.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, for
Like the resurrection.
be lauded or something. And then it's like,
No.
oh, they'll be like dung on the ground.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, there's in the Hebrew, I don't know. There's a prevailing thing, right? You live the right way, or you're going to be punished and go to hell, right? That's kind of, whether you believe it or not, it's out there. It's big. But in the Hebrew mindset, in the Hebrew world, if you live in a certain way, the judgment against you was that you would not be returned to the soil because they didn't want you in to contaminate the soil. You could not be buried because your line had to be cut off, and they had this great environmental image of the circle of life. The Lion King, it's all in the circle of life. And that's very Hebrew. That's very organic Hebrew. But the treatment for you, if you are an aberration, or if you're a wart in the human society,
Sounds awful.
then you don't get buried.
That kind of changed by the time of Jesus, though, because
Oh, yeah.
I think the Greco-Roman customs came, because it was such a cosmopolitan spot.
Yeah.
So then people were buried not underground, but they were buried in caves and ossuaries. The bones went in a little crypt of their own, and so that's a real ancient idea. But the symbolism of you not being, God is not going to be gracious to you if you are not gracious to others. That's a awful thing, though.
Yeah, and this
Your
is
bones will
right.
be spat out by the earth. Ooh.
Yeah, and this is looking for a deeper kind of rejection, because it was thought to be enough that if you lived in a certain way, you just didn't get buried, and then the birds would eat your flesh, and dogs would haul off your bones, and so there was a desecration, like an insult to your body and memory. This says God is gonna go get those who were
Already.
honored and buried and all the rest of it, and I'm gonna undo the honor that they have had because of what you have done now in this life.
Really going, and he mentions even the prophets and
Yeah, it's people that lived their life okay. I mean, because death shall be preferred to life by all remnant that remains of this evil family in all the places where I have driven them.
so you're better off to go to the city and die, right?
The commentary here says this is the residue that survived the Babylonian invasion. So I guess it's giving some chronicle to, when this was actually written.
Yeah, and the questions are still resounding about if we are the people of God, how could the Babylonians have their way with us? How could that happen? You know, I thought God, you know, my footnote talks about, the questions are we not saved? Like, are we not people, God's people? That they trade in avarice and falsehood, and they shamelessly commit idolatry. Though guilt is systemic, the nation's failed leadership bears the brunt of responsibility. Scribes, prophets, priests, they all betrayed their secret duties.
Can that possibly be true? Everyone? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, where does resistance start? And how do you fight against the trend, the motion, the trend towards what the leaders lead to? And again, I can't help it. The context of our present time is different than I've ever lived through, because now you could criticize the leaders, political leaders, and say, what are you doing? What are you chasing after? And then right beside them are the religious leaders. The religious leaders and the political leaders are becoming one.
happened in World War II, but not completely
Yeah.
across the board. There was resistance.
There was resistance. There were theologians, and which is also why Hitler tried to execute all of the educated people.
The intelligentsia and anybody who they didn't like, they went to the concentration camps. So that's frightening. So what do you do to your resistance when you scare the bejesus out of everybody? People are afraid to stand up and fight back. That's the only reason I can think that a whole nation would go along with such utter
Fear.
awfulness, yeah. And maybe that's a lesson for us. Don't let fear rule the day, no matter what. You need to stand up against tyranny. But I think a lot of this, too, is trying to explain why Babylon happened.
Yes, because Babylon was like this. It was this level of destruction. I mean, I keep thinking about the level of destructions that both Israel and Palestine and Hezbollah are inflicting on each other. I mean, it's not just random acts of violence, but it's violence that they were talking this morning on the NPR. They were saying, in the times we live in, either side will find one person in a building, in an apartment building, that they want to execute, and they will kill everyone in the whole place with a bomb that kills everybody. It's just
and how do you deal
indiscriminate.
with, right up to the hour that the ceasefire was supposed to take place, they're bombing the hell out of Beirut, which is completely, jam-packed with people, and living in all these high-rises. You're not going to single out this guy from Hezbollah and that guy. Everybody in that neighborhood is going to get blasted right before you say, okay, now we'll be peaceful. It just defies logic. And I'm upset that, great, there's a ceasefire. How long will it last? Netanyahu has an out. He says, anytime we think Hezbollah is coming back, which could be, next week, we're going to bomb again. But Biden seems to want to take credit for what?
I'm sure that's a delivery for downstairs.
Hey,
I think you want to go downstairs. Is that for the preschool?
yeah.
Daycare? If you follow that sidewalk around, there's a door on the lower level.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Oh, Chris is
Chris is gonna let
go
it
down, yeah. Yeah, so, but it's very Netanyahu is not loved by all the people of
No.
Israel. You cannot blame every Israeli for what the leaders do.
So what level of responsibility do people have for what their leaders do? Because that was your original question is, are you telling me that all the people participated in this? I'm like, well, in some level, I say that, and then, I panic. NPR today had the Canadian Minister of Trade. Basically,
Yeah.
the news from Canada, and then yesterday, a declaration from Mexico was, really? You want the free trade agreement between Canada and the U.S. and Mexico to be over? You don't
Wait
even
till you see
know
what
what you are talking about.
You like guacamole? You will never have it again.
Well, it's worse. I mean, the Mexican president said, you stand up and read your diatribe about how people are, drugs and whatever are coming into your country. He goes, you have no idea the inflow of guns that are coming from the United States. And he said, and guess what? She said, we don't have one gun factory. We don't make
Who
these
makes
guns.
the guns? Right?
You make the guns, and you don't control them. So here we go.
They said on the news, but I trust some of the news outlets, I think, was it PBS or one of them said, 80% of our fruits and vegetables come from Canada and mostly Mexico. Cars, Mexico.
Canada produces a tremendous amount of the cars. And
And the oil that we use to make gasoline to put in the cars,
comes
Canada.
from Canada.
So what is this dude? I mean, and then people say, well, we think he may just be, rattling the sword to make everybody on. But Canada and Mexico are neighbors? Please, come on. I think he's just that stupid.
Yeah, well, what's starting to emerge for me, and it relates to this, is that I feel like this talk about, Mexico this and Canada that, so we're going to punish them. I feel like there's a significant number of people who still live in our country who think that we rule the world.
Oh, undoubtedly. Oh, USA. Ooh,
Yeah.
We rule the world.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it's going to take, really. What will it
Slap
take
in the face to
for
every
us
one
to
of them.
wake up and say, the
No.
globe, this is a global industry. Every part affects another part. What are you doing? You can't just go put a bomb off over there and think it's not going to have an effect in the world.
They listen to these people on right-wing outlets that say just the opposite, that we are exceptional, we should be privileged, what we say should be what goes in the rest of the world, and now we've given a mandate to this. There's no mandate.
No, there isn't.
Like,
But isn't that maybe the same thing that Jeremiah is trying to point out, that the people, not just the leaders, but that the people have lost.
yeah, maybe.
I mean, they've just lost their own identity. But when people fall, do they not get up again?
I'm trying to be more generous to the people of ancient Israel
If they
than
go-
I am to my fellow Americans.
If they go astray, do they not turn back?
Yeah.
Why then has this people turned away in perpetual backsliding?
Why does he say the daughter of the people?
Where's
Why does
that?
he, let's see, it's 18 and 19.
I
Yeah,
think
the cry of the daughter of my people from a far country, and it's somewhere else too.
Yeah,
That
early.
what is the significance of daughter? I wonder.
I think like
Finding anything
whole
in
in
the
the whole
commentary.
nation.
Yeah,
Looking at
there is. I'm used to it, so it didn't stand out for me that the daughter of Zion, the daughter of Zion. This group of people is called the daughter, almost the daughter of God.
For the hurt of the daughter of my people, I am hurt.
Yeah. For the hurt,
It's on
21.
21, 20, yeah.
Yeah, see, my translation doesn't have that. It just says, for the hurt of my poor people, I am hurt. I mourn and dismay has taken hold of me.
It's interesting.
for the hurt, let me see
Do you
what
not
it
have
says
the
here.
NRSV today? You
Uh,
have a different Bible?
yeah, I don't have, I have the new,
Yeah,
NRSV.
that's what I read.
Yeah,
Was the NRSV.
there's a couple of places where you
That's
read that was
funny.
different than what I
Wow,
had.
yeah, that's what I was looking for I think it's the Gateway or
Yep,
something.
let's see,
It's
21.
the NRSV.
The harvest is past, death and mourning rituals are near. Gilead, North Transjordan, was known for its medicinal resins, including balm.
I'm from Gilead. So I'm reading from NRSV too, but mine says NRSV updated. So maybe that explains that,
Oh, yeah.
because I'm on Gateway.
Does you're doing Gateway too?
Yeah, I think my translation was exactly like
Right.
yours.
Well, wait a minute, so you're saying yours is updated and mine is not?
You got the old, you got the analog.
I have 3 copies of this Bible, you mean, I have the new Bible.
I think here and there's a different word substituted, but I don't think that makes that much difference.
It's interesting.
And they've used the metaphor of the daughters of Zion.
Yeah.
All throughout, yeah.
Yeah, they do. They often refer to the people of God as the daughter of Zion.
I guess it's people who are the progeny, you're born of woman.
Right.
And otherwise, women hold short shrift. Because
It's a metaphor in the Bible that refers to Jerusalem
Yeah.
or the Jewish people. It's a way to personify the people of Jerusalem and the relationship between God and his chosen people. The term appears in the Old Testament, often in prophecy and once in poetry.
And it's carried over into, you were talking about how it changed when the Greeks, when the Greek philosophy was intermingled with, the Hebrew theology. But it comes about when Jesus talks about the return, or the church talks about the return in terms of a bride and a bridegroom. That there's this image that God is coming and that God will be the bridegroom, and the church, the early church, was thought of as the bride of Jesus or the bride of God that would wait, and then consummation of the marriage would be the new kingdom. So there's a lot of playing around the idea of the woman from whom this nation ushers forth.
It says they have multiple meanings, a term of endearment, a metaphor for God's relationship, a divine manifestation, and a restoration process. Isaiah describes the process of restoration for the daughter of Zion. It involves stopping wrong, learning right, and seeking justice.
Wisdom is always
Always
feminine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
always.
Unfortunately, a lot of guys don't believe that. But even in here, it's like it stands out to me that this honor is given to this metaphor, and yet the prophet is definitely talking to men, and men alone, because he says, and therefore I will give their wives to others. In other words, he's not saying I will give their wives and I will give your husbands to others.
Right.
So we are still the possessions
Chattel.
of men, and the message is primarily for you guys. Yeah.
But yet, the people are considered feminine
Yeah.
daughters.
So
Kind of
figure that out. I guess you would have to be alive at the time and understand what the common idioms are, and what
Well, I
people
think that there's,
understand.
just thinking about it here and now, there's a lot of biological reasons to think that a people ushers forth from a woman.
Oh, yes.
There is that's where the source of the people is from.
And your Jewishness depends on your
Yeah,
mother.
it's the matriarchal system.
Right.
So I think the soldiers in the battle axe are all men. they are, I'm sure. Although there's even history, Deborah, who was a major player in the battles of Jerusalem, she was a leader of the army.
And a warrior.
A warrior. So, but here at least in Jeremiah's mind, the makers of the war, the makers of the battle, the makers of decisions that are so antithetical to God are men. They're men. And they're married. And so what will be, it's almost like to say, I'm going to take your wives and give them to somebody else, is like this unearthing of the bones of the ancients. To say, I'm taking you out of everything that gives you any sense of hierarchy or legacy or anything. You're going to be cut off. I'm still amazed. My mind is still has a room in my brain somewhere that the light isn't quite shining yet to know just how incredibly brutal human beings can be.
Oh, yeah.
And how morally baseless, to be able to intentionally, eyes wide open, to cause suffering and torment and torture. If you don't like somebody, kill them. But throw them
Get somebody
in
else
prisons
to kill them,
and-
conspire, and tell people it's your God-given right to go murder people. I mean, I've heard people through the years say, oh, the God of the Old Testament is brutal, and people were horribly cruel. Yeah, they were, at times. But look at the 20th and the 21st centuries so far.
It's not
We
changed.
killed on a grander scale.
Even though the Bible exaggerates
The numbers. They have no clue how to wipe out millions.
Yeah, geographically, they're in a postage stamp
Right.
compared to the whole population or the whole geography of the world. But when we talk about the world, we're talking about the world.
Exactly.
We're talking about, we have weapons and ideas that can literally wipe out the whole population of an area.
And now with Space Force, we're going to go out in space too and do the same thing. I mean, really.
I'm so glad we're the ones going to be the defenders in space.
Oh, yes.
Jeez.
That helps you to sleep at night.
Boy, it does not.
Oh.
There was a woman on this morning who was on, Bezos has a space thing too. I forget what it's called.
It's blue something.
Yeah, so
yeah.
she went on that, and
I
she
heard
done the crowd thing to get the money for it. She was,
I heard that interview.
and she actually graduated from MIT. But she lives in West Virginia, but it was beautiful the way she described how this trip, and apparently it had been on YouTube, and then however her reaction was, so they
Feminine.
started mocking her, I guess, that it was too feminine, about when she saw what the Earth looked like from space. So they took it off YouTube. So she put it on her own Facebook or something.
She was like, there's my planet. There's
Right,
my,
yeah.
with such awe. And she said in the interview that seeing it for the first time from space was like when you give birth to a child.
Yes,
You
yes.
know it's there, you've lived with it all this time, but you can't take away the awe from when you finally hold it.
Right,
And she
right.
said, that's what I felt when I was actually seeing it from
Right.
space. And she was so excited
And they took it down.
because all these male trolls said, oh, a woman getting all emotional about, gee, really? She was very
beautiful to
interesting, yeah.
listen to her description, and her excitement, because I'm thinking, who in the world, why would you want to do this? But, I guess, and now she was talking about, I think she's going to share a lot of with the going to schools and, being able to educate people about what it was like, and, but to try to spread the word, and feel that wasn't just, you know, my big wish to, for myself,
Right,
but
yeah.
it just, the awe, I guess, you know, even, you know, when you see the pictures that were taken, you know, how many years, it's 50
Mhm.
years now.
Yeah.
Incredible.
You know, it's just,
Yeah.
it is awe-inspiring, that's for sure.
But the angels did say to God, "Are you sure you know what you're doing? These people are gonna make big trouble." They were right. For some reason, God wanted the experience for him and for
The adventure,
God and for us. Yeah.
right? The adventure.
Let's see how they do. Sometimes great, sometimes not so much. Really. There's this thing about American exceptionalism. When they said that Trump was saying, we're going to stop when we do these tariffs. How this is going to work, I don't know. The tariffs will stop people from coming from Mexico and Canada into the United States. And somebody on the radio said, and how many are coming from Canada into the United States? We're going the other way. Just, like, the man has no understanding of lots of things, and we have put him in charge. So was this like the leadership back then? Putting people in positions of leadership when they're ignorant? Perhaps.
Yeah, and it's hard to compare because we forget the benefits that we have in understanding ourselves as players in the government. You know, that up until, I don't know, really recent history, the government was God. I mean, it was those that came to govern, the kings, the queens. I mean, look at the coronations that go on still in England. You know, it's you are God's chosen leader, and to defy the leader was to defy God. But even when the criticism are my people have gone astray, I would go, well, really? Maybe you should have given them, God given them a little more say in it, because I don't think they had a lot of say in it.
I don't think so. I agree with you. I don't think they have.
I mean, I think we don't have as much say as we think we have.
You're right.
And
Obviously.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I think there are ways and things that happen that would shock us in terms of how, you know, our pathway is forged and what we do and what we don't do. There's a lot of that, which is way beyond me.
It's a lot of backstory, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so, okay, I have a vote, which I value, and it seems still to make a difference. But for
Depending on
better,
what state
for
you live in.
worse. But
I heard this morning too on the radio that the North Carolina, I can't think of his name, but the governor is going to veto that bill that they passed, giving all power to, and taking
to
power
that
away.
one person.
The election,
And
election connection.
actually, he's not, he's in charge of the elections, but it's some other title.
It's an administrator's position, that, yeah.
Something. And he, of course, the Democratic governor is going to veto it, but they say the supermajority in the House will override the veto, they think. So let's see. But there is the majority of the people in that state have voted. They're told your vote means something.
Right.
They go out and they vote, and it's taken away by scheming. I mean, that is just awful.
And that's why people say that, you know, my vote doesn't count. What difference does it make?
In that case, I think they have a right to say that, yeah.
No, in church history, the reason that a lot of the denominations, especially after the Reformation, did not follow the model of the Pope and then the trickle-down idea was because they believed that, well, there are three models of human government. One is one person at the top controls everything. The second one was the mob rules. Whatever the people want is what gets done. One vote, one rule. That's Baptists. That's how they run their church. Everybody has a vote. And it doesn't matter what the subject, whatever the popular vote is, that's what they do. And then there's Presbyterians, Anglicans, and everybody in between that tries to borrow from both models. But in the end, and this is where the Electoral College comes from.
Exactly. We don't want to give that much
they
power
did
to the
not
hoi
trust.
polloi. Yeah.
And in Grove City, they used to harangue everybody and say, you know, kids in high school were taught, you know, we're a democracy. We are not a democracy. We never have been a democracy. Founding fathers hated democracy. And, you know, and so they use that idea to then go on and still have strong powers, pools of power that correct the mistakes of the mob.
I mean, you had to be a wealthy or a land-owning white male. Nobody else got to vote. And that idea, I guess, didn't seem to bother the leadership back then. That was just the natural thing. Well, who would think to give women, you know, they have to listen to their husbands. So why even give them the opportunity to vote, you know? Or who are the indigenous people? They're not us. They're not human. Black people are slaves.
Yeah.
They're only 3/5 of a human being. So, and that was common thought.
And it's painful. To
Yeah.
me, it's painful. It's painful to like,
Absolutely.
what?
Yeah.
But again, echoes of the economics in Grove City. They said if democracy ever really took place, the people would vote to drain the treasury. They would take all the money that's collected by the nation, they would take it and they would spend it, and the nation would fail. Because that's what people do.
Well,
So-
look what all this
It's
free
all
thinking
been drained.
and voting has done for us this time. Even with the Electoral College. I say now the Electoral College is working against what they planned to begin
Yeah.
with. It's
Yeah.
actually making it harder for thinking people to have, because I think the majority of people in this country, I think, if they really thought about it, moved themselves out to vote, would give up this idea, the misogynistic baloney that has prevented 2 competent female candidates, sane people, from taking the presidency away from an insane, immoral human being.
But
I
he
can't explain.
he has the right ideas. He has the right idea to break up a conspiracy of control that is ruining America.
Drain the swamp.
Yeah, America is being destroyed.
I'm only choosing the best people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hold on to your hat. Luckily, there are still some Republicans who kind of don't agree with his idea of the best people. Let's see what happens with the rest of them.
I think too, to ground it to this, there, at least in my fairy tale brain, the United States saw itself as having a responsibility for benevolence and care, for rescuing in circumstances that we learned where abuse was taking place. America would send its troops. We would go and, you know, and that the exceptionalism of America was the same exceptionalism that was due to this people, which was we are exceptionally blessed. And so we must be exceptionally the keepers of our neighbors. We must be, not the controllers, but go to the places where rescue is needed, where help is needed. When there's a famine,
Right.
we go there because look at our fields.
That works if your leadership stays not greedy.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes, it's like, what are we going to
Yet
get
still,
out of this?
what have we done in the name of helping?
Right.
In Haiti.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean,
It's-
is there no hope for Haiti? It's just it's so sad to see these
Mhm.
poor people going through this, you know,
Knowing that we
year
have
after year.
screwed things up there right from the beginning. But, you know, they give us the idea that we're doing altruistic things, and
Right.
sometimes that's how it's generated. You
Right.
know, the genesis of some of these things is in altruism.
Right?
But then there's always somebody in the leadership that says, and by the way, while we're there, they have a lot of oil, or they have sugar plantations, we can take advantage of this. There's always somebody in some position of trust that betrays that trust, and then,
Yeah, and so what does it mean to help?
yeah.
And
How
that-
can we help?
And that is.
What is help?
Yeah, and that's a question that is being pursued at every level. It's like, how does one nation help another? What does it mean? It's also, you know, how does a mother and father help a troubled child? How do you help? Because mostly you try to help and you make it worse. You make it worse. You undermine the child's sense of self-esteem. You like, it is, this is such a complicated world. It is such a complicated life. And you know.
That's why you can't say everybody who lived then was a crook and a thief
No.
and yet that's what the prophet is trying to say.
Well, they did a lot of that, throw everybody in together. You know, they have one man's name for the whole nation, Israel.
Yeah.
Is Israel. It's like, this is that person. So we've lost all that. We now have individualism. And we see every person as an individual. They didn't. They saw every person was part of the family that you were generated from. That's who you are. And that's why they gave the same name to every child that was born. Because, again, going back to this was eternal life. This really was Jacob. This really is Israel being reborn. And, you know, you die, but you pass on your name and the spirit of who you are to the next child that comes along.
It's like George Foreman, right?
Exactly. Like George Foreman. Only
Every
you don't
kid
give.
was George
Yeah,
Foreman.
well, he gave all the children in the same generation the same name. You're supposed to
Keep
let
it
the
going.
name move on. You know, wait till the next.
When you're at a family reunion, how do you?
Yeah, you call Hey George,
1,
and
2,
everybody
3,
goes.
4.
Yeah, numbers. Yeah, I guess we can't really compare ourselves, and yet in some ways we can. I mean,
Well, we can certainly learn the lessons, whether it's, I don't know, what is the first lesson to be very careful about recognizing how broken human beings are, including myself. I have the ability to deceive myself, and that's scary. You know, like, there are people who get involved in terrible things, and they just have never really seen the effect of what they've done. I chalk that up to the effect of American missionaries sent out into the world by well-meaning churches, you know, especially the missionary Baptist churches. You know, they had their maps with people all over the world. You know, the gospel church down here, you can see it from the street. They had this global picture, you know, on the wall inside their lobby, and then the red lines to all the places where they have their ambassadors working in those towns. And the question is, what are they doing there? Are they only just telling the story of a God of love and care?
one would hope some are, and I know the Presbyterian missions to the Middle East made American University, which is serving all the people without prejudice, and one bright spot in an otherwise awful area of the world, but
the Presbyterian Church sent missionaries who were very well educated. They were trained in culture. They were trained to be careful not to try to dominate and take over. The majority of the American missionary movement in the world was not that. It was well-intentioned people who went into villages, who were appalled by the fact that people were half naked, and all they did did was ship clothes, you know, because people had to be clothed.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, the Poisonwood Bible, have you read that book?
Barbara
Kingsall.
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 Yeah.
That was a very, very, very disturbing book to me. Very disturbing. And
We did that in Hawaii. One of the first things they said is, put clothes on these people. And, well, look at, it's Indigenous Peoples Month, right? And we're still living with what we did to the Indigenous children and putting them in schools
Right.
where I'm sure the people who did that were well-intentioned.
oh yeah, they thought they were saving savages.
Exactly. And it destroyed lives.
Yeah, they were dragging people out of a savage culture that was, you know, they were all going to go to hell. So they dragged the children out, dressed them, taught them how to speak properly, taught them what manners are, and, you know, the children that resisted, they killed them. It just,
This lasted until the 70s.
Yes, it
Even
did.
the early 80s, they had some of the schools still operating in it. It's frightening to think that well within my lifetime, there were people doing those things. And I think I recall, actually, when I was very young in Sunday school, having people talk about the mission to the Indian populations.
Yeah, it was-
And I have no idea what they were doing.
Right.
Maybe they were operating some of those schools, I don't know.
well, some of the Presbyterian and Reformed missions were about food relief and helping, because alcohol addiction was rampant. And they would go in with, you know, some of the better angels of ourselves, but then, you know, historical reflection on the movement, this thing which has been a part of Christianity since the first century, which was to move out and to win adherents, right? Was opening the door and plowing the way for industry and for other types of exploitation to come in. So, you know, wherever the missionaries went, that's where American industry went. That's where, you know, the money went to, as you said, they have oil there.
Oh, yeah.
They're not going to miss it. They don't burn oil in cars. They don't have cars. So we'll take it. And by the way, we won't really pay for it.
Exactly.
Or if they don't need it, their money.
There was a treaty? Oh, who cares about that?
And the British Empire was most
Oh.
guilty.
Really, yeah.
You know, everywhere around the world where the British went, they exploited.
It's still mind-boggling to me that this small little island could take over a third of the world or
India,
more.
look at all the, yeah. John Oliver, if you ever watch his show, whenever he gets on his high horse and he's talking about, you know, doing justice, he goes, I know it sounds stupid for somebody who has my accent to be telling you this. He always half apologizes or outright apologizes for what the British Empire did to the world.
And isn't it a testament to what attitude can do?
Yeah.
You know, you believe in yourself and you have the attitude, the people will be dominated. They will be dominated.
You're entitled.
Yeah. And
So what did the Israeli people think back then? I wonder how many people bought into, we must have done something to displease God. Then looking at, where do we live? Look at the real estate we're occupying. It's on the crossroads of every huge empire. Do we really think we're going to get through unscathed? Of course not. That's reality. And then to equate it with every bad thing that happens, it must be because you people have gone astray. I still don't think every single person has gone astray.
they were uniquely positioned, though, to carry out the mission of God.
They were.
They didn't have to go
People came
because
to
the world
them.
was coming to them.
Exactly.
And I think that, true or false, misguided or not, the idea was that if they were a nation of benevolence, that the nations coming through would
Probably.
leave them alone,
Or maybe just laughed as
protect
they
them.
slaughtered
Yeah,
them.
maybe. And then unfortunately,
Or I'm told you're too feminine. Take it down. It's too funny.
You daughters.
And then when they were slaughtered, they did what every human being does from the time they're a child.
Exactly,
You know,
revenge.
every child believes it's their fault.
I
Everybody.
thought you were going to say revenge, because once somebody does something bad to you, it's awfully hard not to go after, yeah.
I'm in working with children in school and trying to learn how to reach children. You know, the amazing thing about human children is they take responsibility. They believe they're guilty. If the parents are getting divorced, they don't care what anybody
yeah.
says. They're responsible.
Yeah, what did we do to cause that? It's true.
And they have, until the brain forms later, at like 21 or 22, they have this part of the brain which accepts responsibility, whether out on the surface or not. They believe in their heart that they are responsible in a way like the prophets reinforce. And it's horrible to try to work with children to try to get at that and to reinforce to them, you're not responsible for what happened. You're not. Because they fill their lives with so many things they are responsible for. You know, they paint over the whole thing with outrageous behavior. And then, again, it all comes rushing back to me because we're working with this child, you know, whose mother tried to kill herself. His grandmother is a raging drug addict and prostitute. The grandmother lives on the streets of Patterson. But the woman that the state assigned to this child, he's 3 years old, is his great-grandmother. But you have to figure out how to put the lineage together because it's all mixed up. And this kid, I don't know whether he thinks no one is going to pay attention to him or what, but he is, a switch goes off in his head and he becomes a raging human being. He climbs up, if there is any surface, he climbs up on top of it. He climbs up to the point where he scares you that he's going to fall off and break his leg. He doesn't care. He gets a hold of the toys, he throws them at the littlest kid in the classroom. And so we take him out, right? You just sort of corral him out. You're not allowed to physically take a hold of him. So we sort of corral him out in the hallway and we take him over to the big classroom that no one's using right now. And
Beat the crap out of
I'm
kidding.
No, listen, you don't understand.
feel like
I have this capacity in me. I will control you.
Right.
So I go to the teachers and you do this. They take him over there in that classroom, and in 10 seconds, he's a different child.
Really?
Oh my goodness, he's the sweetest child. He is.
He's getting individual attention.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. He came to school Monday. We kicked him out for 2 days and tried to get to him. He loves and hates the school. So we said to him, you can't be here. You're behaving like this.
Yeah.
You're breaking things. So we sent him home on Thursday early and told him he couldn't come back on Friday. I don't know what that was like at home. I'm sure that was out of control for the people who try to control it. But he came to school on Monday, and I went down. I was very curious to see. He arrives at 9 o'clock. Got there about 9:15. And I walked in, and it was very peaceful in his classroom. And I said to someone, his teacher, I said, is Makai here? She goes, yeah, he's here. He's right over there. So I walked over, and they were playing in the dress-up area. And he had on a construction worker's outfit. It was a really nice-looking hard hat. And he had the hard hat on. And one of the other children playing there was looking around and wanted a hard hat. So she came over to Makai, and she's shorter. She looked up at his hat, and she said, I want that. And he said, do you want this hat, this hard hat? She said, yeah, I want that. He went,
Yay.
here.
Oh,
said, here, you take this. He goes, I'll go find another one. I
You
couldn't,
didn't pass out, did you?
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And then one of the other kids had seen this, right? This was an event. And one of the other kids said, hey, Makai, there's another helmet over there under the desk. And that kid went over and got the helmet from Makai, and he put that helmet on. And then, so I go, what is it? Like, really, what is it that creates this capacity for mine and selfish, and I'm going to hurt you, and I'm going to break this, to then, and it wasn't prompted by anybody. It was totally generated within himself. He had just decided, and it carried through the day, he had just decided that on this day, on this Monday, I'm going to have a peaceful coexistence here.
Be cooperative.
I'm gonna be nice.
Well, it was Tuesday, right?
I don't know.
Well, no news is good news,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, I was down there this morning, and it's sort of a mixture, at least the interaction that I had with him this morning. But he was having trouble with one child, and he's not the only problem kid in the classroom. He was having trouble with this one other kid, and he decided rather than fight it out with him, he turned to Selma, the teacher, and told her what was going on.
Oh,
I mean, that's all you really want.
yeah, you always tell them if something's wrong, let us know.
Communicate with words
Right.
rather than.
I think he is now worried that he's going to be removed from the school,
Oh.
and that's
Okay.
staying with him.
Right.
And if that's what changes his behavior,
Yeah, that
fine.
takes, yeah.
I wonder what happens in the home, though, when he goes home. And probably a lot of things to make him angry all the time.
We got to go look at that. When last Monday, I said, we can't do this anymore, we need a conference. So we called in the great-grandmother, and we got his mother on a Zoom. I didn't know she was going to be on it. I didn't even know she was well enough to be on it. She's recovered from her attempted suicide. And she has a lot of opinions. Man, she has a lot of opinions about what needs to happen and what not. But we often hear, if we call a conference for a kid's behavior, we'll often hear, and I think they're telling the truth, the parents will say, but he doesn't behave like this anymore. He doesn't, he only does that in school. Well, in this case, it's the opposite. His mother said, well, she goes, it's finally time that he's behaving in school the way he behaves at home, because he is a terror at home. He throws things around, he runs around the house, and evidently he has a brother, I didn't know this, but he has a brother who's bigger than he is, who picks on him
Oh, of
all
course.
the time.
Yeah, that's,
And there's no adult, there is no
Nobody's
adult
sticking up
in
for
that
him.
house,
right.
none. A poor kid, I just,
So you can understand where the anger comes from, because if you're always put down and you never have a chance for justice, then you're not going to deal justly with the kids you come in contact with in school.
It always marvels me, people who take foster children in, because that has to be an incredible experience. It's hard enough with your natural children to raise them, but kids who have gone through that kind of an upbringing or whatever, to take that on.
and the state has changed in the period of time that I've worked with schools and children. It used to be in any situation like that, the state could take the child out of the environment.
Right.
They don't do that at all anymore. They are sold on the idea that, this mother committed suicide and then was in psychiatric. She still has 50% custody of the child. So they awarded custody to the great-grandmother and this great-granddaughter, or this daughter. And and the two of them disagree, but the
Yeah.
state won't allow. So the reason that mother showed up on Zoom in my meeting was because the great-grandmother explained she's not allowed to come in and talk to us about his behavior in the school without inviting the mother to come in. She doesn't have that kind of control.
So do they feel that it's important for the child to stay in the family, or they just don't have foster parents to do it?
Good thought. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, the logic is that they feel like they've paid the price for the arrogance of thinking to take the child away from the mother, and then to see what happens when they do that. You know, it's just, but now the grandmother is petitioning the court to have the mother's rights completely
Parental rights
removed.
taken away, yeah.
But, and the grandmother, she's good intention, but she has no discipline. All she has is, you know, she'll, oh, what do you want? I'll give you candy, I'll give you food. You want to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning? You can do whatever you want to do. Because she feels guilty about, you know, the bad things that have happened. Somehow that story is right here too. It is. It's right here. It's how does justice, how does mercy, how does goodwill actually come into our lives? How do we, I don't know, how do we help other people? And if you listen
How do
in,
we help ourselves?
how do we help ourselves? You know, if you listen in on an Al-Anon meeting, retraining of parents to help parents, this whole thing of codependency and all that those parents learn to say, in some ways, I don't want your help. I've got to figure this out on my own. I've got to come to terms with this on my own. And the same thing for recovering addicts and alcoholics. They don't want anybody's pity. They don't want anybody's, like, mercy. Yeah, if they're hungry, a piece of bread wouldn't be bad. But they recognize that there's something about, well, what's what we call it, self-help, right?
What works for one person doesn't work for another, because we're all individuals, very different personalities, and you know, all we can say is, well, this worked for me, you know, this helped me, but it doesn't mean it's going to help.
No, that's right. And that's why, in some ways, the model of the 12-step groups is a good one, because it's circle and you hear other people's stories. That's it. You just hear their story, and then you have to filter it in to your own life. What does their story mean in my life? And when that begins to take place, that's when people find their way to sobriety, to some kind of recovery. But if you have to do that, it's one thing to do it like this men's discussion group that comes in here, and there's men I know that have been in that group. They walk through that door, and they've been coming for 15 years while I've been here. But what is it like? I mean, here they come to a pretty nice environment and all the rest of it. But what's it like to try to get sobriety in some of the harder sections of Patterson? I mean, it's... And is poverty among people in general in cities like that, is that the result of the greed and the bartering that took place years ago that, you know, ruined the city? It's not their fault.
You're right. I mean, some things were foisted upon citizens of cities. The redlining and the, you know, no opportunity, educational inequality. That's no fault of the people who lived in the city.
No.
And what you're, and then they're further isolated, folks in the inner city, when everybody else moves out.
Right.
And then, how do you?
And jobs move out, and you don't have transportation to get to a job.
Decent housing isn't there anymore. And then somebody comes along and says, you know, this is a good place for a superhighway,
Yeah,
right
that's
through your
right.
neighborhood.
That's the other part of it, is we need to give the people that have cars a chance to get there quicker.
So
It's
the years of that kind of systemic abuse of people in certain situations has a lasting effect. It's not going to get better overnight. It's just,
And how many people also in Vietnam War, when they were starting to take drugs, we didn't have the drug problem in this country. I don't think, I never heard of, but the only people that ever got by were musicians.
That's
Artists.
right. Artists.
those
Yeah.
jazz artists,
Right.
those guys,
But,
beatniks.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
they did come back drug addicted. They did.
so when the availability of drugs and the price, if they're inexpensive and they're available, and you've had, PTSD probably from, wartime experiences, what did we think? And now drugs are available all over the world. It's big business now. It's not, I guess it was always there, but not to the extent it is today, because stuff moves with the speed of lightning.
Right.
Put it on a plane, put it on a ship.
Thinking it's a quick fix. It's a fix, all right.
But Trump has the solution. He's going to put tariffs that'll help people who are drug addicted. Really.
You have to laugh at anyone if they paid attention to the complexity of problems in the world, who stands up and goes, I can fix it.
Yeah.
You go, no, you can't. Just sit down. Sit down and learn a little bit about how complex the problems are. Now, I don't know enough about it, but I see it enough to know, okay, what really affected cities like Patterson. With Patterson, it was the clothing industry getting shipped overseas, and that buyers were no longer buying materials and clothing here, they bought it over there. Who was buying it? Oh, American people of wealth. And the other cities of New Jersey were decimated when, I actually thought they weren't using steel anymore to build buildings, because all the steel mills are closed. The entire city of Pittsburgh went to hell because, and now guess what? Well, now we're learning that in fact, we use all those high-rise, steel is used now more than ever. It's just not bought
Comes
here.
mostly from China. So we can make steel.
Yeah.
And that is what this administration tried to
Yeah,
do.
they did start to do it. They're starting to remake steel in the United States.
Yep.
Like,
This morning I was watching that stupid Portal Bridge, which I thought was fixed like 4 or 5 years ago.
yeah.
They're finally putting together some of the pieces, and somebody was saying, unfortunately, when it's come to completion, people will think it was Trump that did it, because
Right. It'll be
stuff that was
celebrated.
started during Biden's administration will finally be
Right.
coming to fruition. Buttigieg was saying a lot of that. A lot of the projects
Right.
are ongoing, and
Right,
they will
absolutely.
be
Now,
completed.
nothing can be done overnight, that's for sure.
So people won't realize, they'll
Right.
think, and far be it from Trump to
Oh, he'll take
use
credit.
it.
He'll take all the credit in the world. Just pile it up for me. I'll come show it off.
See what I did for you? Yeah, we used to make steel, we can make steel again. We can do that.
Well, and again, here you go to the greed, right? Why did it fall? Because of greed, and because steel
Make it
workers
cheaper overseas
were not going to work
for nothing.
for pittance. They weren't going to have their lives destroyed to make steel that mega rich people were making millions on. And so they exported the jobs. Now, Trump claims that he's so against that. He wants the jobs to come back home, but I'm not convinced. We'll go look and see where his investments are. All right, well, we've got our warning.
Yeah.
Just pay attention to the warnings, because if you don't live your life the right way, even dying won't get you out from God's punishment, because they're going to drag your ass up out of the grave.
Balls will be
spread your remains around the city.
Messy.
Well, it was hard times, you know. And hard times require hard measures. And besides, no one listened anyway. It didn't work.
Are there times when there are no hard times? That's probably the better question.
There are times when the nations repent.
Yeah.
There are, and they wake up and they say, we don't want to live this way. We don't want to be exploiting our neighbors. Let's
Do things differently. Let's make a UN. See how that works.
let's see if we can construct peace.
Right.
All right, well, thank you for the discussion. Thank you to online community. If you listened in, you probably had a lot to say about what we were saying.